Okay, so as you can see, I'm currently at a power solutions company, but I have a 35-year career record at Jag Land Rover. Started at Jaguar in 1986, was bought out by Ford, been through various levels of ownership and complex systems interaction. And picking up on a point that Peter made earlier on, just a few moments ago in his presentation, cybersecurity, there is a view of cybersecurity that it's a very specialist set of very pointed, very focused solutions which have to be conformed to by businesses moving forward. Partly what we want to talk about today as a group, because this is a panel session at the end of the day, is to open that up and start to explore the real world implications of this on businesses that have to conform against those criteria but still operate successfully. And as you'll see, we're going to explore car companies in my session. They are, in my view, and many of you will have heard me say this before, the most complex systems out there in the world today. And I mean that at a commercial level. They have the level of diversity of the users, owners, operators, the environments in which they have to survive and exist in are more complex sets of system parameters than any other environment which you have to design and work to. So we're going to explore this as a set of automotive attributes, but the principles apply to any complex system, and please keep that in mind when I work through some of the key points that I want to make. Okay. In my notes here, it says historically, cyber has been very much focused on the need to conform and comply, and historically, though, is a very new term. So passenger cars in particular have been only connected for a very few years compared to the to a lot of the other cyber principles, but they expose the community and the world to a much higher level of risk because of the performance envelopes that they operate in. They're large things, they're dangerous, and particularly aspirationally moving forward. I'm going to move on to another slide in a second on the change in the landscape. The transformations in how they're going to be used moving forward very much change the business propositions which have to be defended. In fact, I've gone 2 slides forward here. So I just want to summarise some of the changes the automotive sector are dealing with. We're actually lucky to have in the audience this afternoon Mr. Mouzaketis here, who spoke during the keynote session. Fascinating from my point of view, because I was at JLR with Alex for a great deal of time. The board has now recognised the need to have a director of operational cybersecurity in its business unit. Took us 15 years to create that role and principle from when we first started talking about those kind of things. Not a criticism of JLR. It's far from unique in there that there are many other companies that haven't even got as far as that. But the kinds of changes to the risk space that car companies are experiencing on continues to grow and demand these new levels of solution and approach because of the system complexities that are out there. But what's interesting about automotive is that despite all of that complexity, despite the social impacts that cars have, car makers and the businesses that they run are still deemed to be a competitive commercial space. So if you talk to any CEO, any board member in a car company, they think that you can win the race of being the best car company by doing development, innovating, introducing new stuff in isolation from every other car company globally. And you do that with the aspiration of getting there first, getting ADAS working, having the first autonomous vehicle. The list goes on and on and on of the innovations that they want to bring through. But the real threats in cybersecurity space are completely common mode to all passenger cars. And again, this is part of the business transformation that we progressively need to start exploring and discussing. It applies in other industries as well, is to work through how you can maintain the innovation, how you can create the value, but still be safe, be secure. And the key principles over the next 4 slides are to look at opportunities for influencing the board, as Peter pointed out in his introduction, to help them from a cybersecurity perspective to enrich the tooling, the processes, the facilitation that they have with the disciplines that are inherent to cybersecurity, the detailed level of understanding that underpins how you make these things safe and secure and robust and resilient. And, for simplicity's sake, I'm going to just say, the key thing probably underlying all of this is modularity and decomposition as a key principle within cybersecurity. That is a fairly fundamental technique which we can apply and use, and builds out from that challenge of conformance to the legislation, which is a necessity. It lags the threat. The legislation lags the threat, but the conformance drives the commercial risk that the business is exposed to. So let's just start talking about opportunity 1 for approaching this. I've got that's just showing me what the next slide was. Okay, sorry. The other thing I should have mentioned, I have to have my reading glasses on for my nose now. I can't see anything else. It's a problem of being this age. Same age as Peter, I might add. Right. Right. So if you look at business operations, there's a fundamental principle in running businesses, selling stuff to people of brands and brand loyalty. And funnily enough, over lunch we were talking about how you manage people's perception in the context of cybersecurity for brand loyalty. So they won't necessarily, as customers, of which there are hundreds of millions globally, billions actually, hundreds of millions of new sales per annum, but billions of customers, how you manage their perception of the integrity of your product and brand. And one of the key principles that emerges from cybersecurity is the opportunity to reassure progressively on the risk spectrum and Pareto that they are getting a good quality product, and that using the techniques of cybersecurity and business delivery, that you can depend on those methods as part of your business delivery to your customers. But you can see how it can go wrong. So, there are a number of German manufacturers at the moment. I won't name any. The only manufacturer I'm going to talk about much today is Tesla, which will come up several times through this. But there are a number of German manufacturers currently who are delivering customer cars. They have had historically a great brand reputation for quality and capability, but that has been tanked over the last 2 or 3 years by the delivery of their software functionality to the vehicle. And it's in two or three dimensions. There's features missing, which they were promoting. There's features that don't work when they get them, and then the customer satisfaction then gets further degraded when they take them into the dealership, and the dealership keeps the car for 2 or 3 months trying to work out what to do about it. And the principles within cybersecurity that allow you to manage the integrity of those programs in a controlled and structured way, using techniques like the modularity to cause that to happen, are critically valuable. And Tesla are quite good at it. They started off, they had the luxury, in inverted commas, of a clean sheet of paper. But again, they're probably the most technically sophisticated vehicle out there. I'm explaining this because I'm assuming that there's a reasonable proportion of you who aren't car companies. from car companies. Tesla have done a remarkable job, actually, of making a deployable, upgradable product into the marketplace. And they've had, considering the scale at which they do it, they've had actually very few emergent issues that are related to the upgrade and maintenance process compared to inherently just having got the principle of the thing wrong in the first place, same as all the other car companies. Next on the Pareto is probably the likes of Hyundai and Kia, who are fairly good at it, but keep much more quiet about it. They don't blow their own trumpet about it. And then in the rest of the population, there are the vast majority of other car manufacturers who don't make any significant claims relating to their system performances, their capabilities, their reliability, robustness in this space. And that's because they don't, in part because they don't understand it at board level, that there is that business benefit to be derived from organising their workflows to be successful and not to allow these things to emerge and keep them under control. Now, there is an interesting use case that's emerging at the moment, and again, I sadly follow the technical media quite a lot for passenger car engineering, but you may be aware, and I'll tell the 3 steps of the story. VW some time ago decided that software was a critical characteristic of their vehicle design. That was quite an innovative approach for a board to take that view. They span out a separate and independent company that looks after software. But they've struggled. They found it really, really difficult, and I don't have time to go into all the reasons why that might have happened. But what is interesting now is that VW, independent of that company, have now started buying into another car company. They've taken a $1 billion, 20% position in Rivian, who are an American company, spin out of staff from Tesla, who have a similarly capable software ecosystem, not quite as good, not quite as flexible. They don't have the same level of investment that Tesla does. But VW are trending towards buying out the entire company because it's cheaper than operating their own internal software factory. Their internal software factory is targeted to cost $10 billion over the next 5 years to operate. They can acquire total control of Rivian for less than $2.5 billion. And then they can get a complete ecosystem of scalable, adaptable, modularized, assured software products from that space. So these kinds of business transformations are what we need to be driving and controlling as cyber professionals. Next opportunity, I'm slightly conscious on time here, I've already started waffling, is a classical view of the kinds of risks that emerge relating to cyber in the automotive space. This particular set of data on the screen here, as you can see from the reference, is historic data over the last 13 years, and it shows the systematic vulnerability of automotive companies to cyber attack. Now, automotive space is bringing in a huge amount more connected vehicles, and this will change. There will be more vulnerability related to intrusive attacks. At the moment, there's not a huge amount of really hazardous stuff that you can do as a generalization. When we get to comprehensive ADAS functionality, that's going to get much, much worse, and the business risk will grow massively, which companies need to prepare for. So there is an opportunity at the moment from the cyberspace to get these kinds of messages through, to understand that the practices that exist within the cyber disciplines can be applied progressively and in a organized way, because the transformations will be enormous, but to make these kinds of things more and more manageable as time goes by. The key point that I wanted to make here is that transformation involves a top-level business transformation as well. Most car companies are organised around manufacturing of things from a bill of material. They buy in a couple of thousand parts, they assemble them in the factory, they launch them, they validate that they work, and then they send them out to the customer base. And the business calculations are done around the affordability and viability of that, cash flow, annualized, those kinds of things. The intellectual property of those bills of material at the moment are heavily biased towards the tier one suppliers who sell them the parts. The functionality which dictates the performance of the vehicle is ingrained in those tier one bill of materials. As you get into features which emerge from collaborative controls between multiple ECU vendors and the higher order functions that deal with things like ADAS and EV management, the risk both compounds up, but the parent company, the OEM who's manufacturing these things, has to get better at knowing how they work and what the liabilities that they're susceptible are with that. Cybersecurity is an incredibly powerful framework for organising that, coordinating it and managing it with the disciplines that go into the emergent distributed capabilities that come from originally organising cybersecurity in the general internet and IT space. How am I doing for time, Peter? You're overrunning. Okay. Right. Thank you. So I'll try and speed it up a little bit then. A couple of things in terms of new revenue opportunities, which is, of course, is a third class of making a better business contribution for things that are associated to cybersecurity. I'll just drop in a few examples here. So in my own current technical community, we're working on the principle of using the cybersecurity concepts to give a secured traceability on the level of work which battery cells have done, in order that you can sell them a second time over. So take a battery set out of a passenger car, have a certified history of how much work each cell in that system has done, and then they can be sold with these batteries aren't knackered. You can use them for another purpose. They will deliver value and have a residual capability because they haven't been thrashed to death. Using cyber technologies, that's one type of opportunity which can be promoted directly from the cyberspace. Another is alternative business models. And again, there's been recent press announcements from Tesla. Wasn't a great press announcement because they didn't do as much as they said they were going to do, but they have reinvigorated the concept of Tesla owners being able to lease their vehicles conceptually out to do taxi transfer work without having to be there. The car just goes off and does it on its own and then returns. That's a completely new business paradigm emergent from the level of abstracted control and security which they have achieved within Tesla. And the third one, which again I think is crucial in this space, is the governmental and industry sector aspirations of where we are going to next with things like smart city and the commercialization of smart city is heavily dependent on this stuff. But in reality, we are massively behind where we said we were going to be 10 years ago, 5 years ago, last year. We're not making that progress. But if the cybersecurity disciplines which we live and breathe here in this room are driven much higher up into both government and into the business operations, the reality of that situation and the commercial opportunities can be capitalised on much better because of the real risk, as opposed to the pipe dream of smart cities can be brought out as a critical enabler. Right, last one is really a little bit of a summary of all the others. I added this little triangle. We love triangles in systems engineering in general, and the three-way pulls of balances of complexity. Peter laid out for me the challenge of innovation at business level, and the most significant thing in my view relating to that is a top-level philosophical challenge. And I've touched on it a little bit earlier on. When you get to aspiring to things like smart cities and you want to coordinate vehicles, any vehicle from any manufacturer, they all have to conform to the same set of standards. Now, you need innovation to get to that conformance, but once you get the conformance, the opportunity to continue to innovate is taken away from the primary controls. Everyone is working at the same standard, or they're not safe. And that paradigm needs exploring a lot as we move forward. Okay? Then we get onto the fun stuff, okay? Hope this works.
Well, they said as well.
So, right, that was 2 weeks ago. That was Mr. Musk and his SpaceX organisation, and I've put this sort of thing into my presentations into automotive boards for 12, 13 years now, from the first time they first recovered one of their first stages. The scale of innovation that you just saw in that 16-second clip is astonishing. None of the media stories that covered it in the Sky and BBC explained what you're actually seeing there, but just so that everyone is on the same page and understands the scale of innovation that Musk has and Tesla has access to, and the degrees of freedom of thinking, so that you can, of what you have to compete with moving forward in the automotive space. That was 232 feet tall, 21-story building. It weighs 200 tons. 6 seconds before it got caught by the jaws, it was moving at 100 kilometers an hour. 7 seconds before that, it was above the speed of sound. Okay? It had been in orbit 75 kilometers up into space, traveling at 5,000 kilometers an hour. I'm going to run the video again because it's quite a neat little detail. Come on, it's going to work. You'll notice that these bars here are dampers, and the whole thing is coordinated. Those dampers spring to take in some load and then settle down to lock off the whole system. Okay. The amount of modular systematic design, reusability in this is astonishing. The two more bits that go with it. 24 hours after this, that whole module, the 232-foot thing, had been transferred back to the building block where it was manufactured a couple of months earlier, to be stripped down, to be re-evaluated, because the intention of catching these is so they can be flown again. They cost over $100 million each, and that's the objective they're trying to get to. What's missing from here, and again, this is the detail that we have got to get across to the board that understands all the things you have to take into account. There's a ring missing off the top of that, which they threw away in space this time because it weighs 20 tons, and they didn't have enough fuel flexibility in this booster because it was manufactured 7 or 8 months ago. They knew that they weren't going to have enough fuel, so they threw away the heavy bit so they could manage the landing. But this isn't the only one of these they've got. They've got 7 more of these already manufactured, so they didn't bother taking them all to pieces to upgrade the fuel system on it. They just compensated for the weight difference. And it's that level of anticipation, planning, modularity, which we have to be prepared for. Skip over both of those. Right, final summary, and then you can shut up, Jed, and get off stage. So I just want to reiterate, really, Automotive is a bit different. We are special people in the automotive sector because of the systematic complexities that we have to deal with. It's a great place for exploring and testing the kinds of failure modes that you might have in a business model because of the dynamics that go with it, the scalability, the volume of people who are implicated in it, and the portfolio of legislation that ultimately is going to get applied. But I just want to reiterate again the opportunity that cybersecurity has in changing that paradigm to move away from the manufacturing bill of materials centric thing to a structured, layered design, horizontally abstracted, decoupled control capabilities are the kinds of technical transformations that we have to make, and we have to make the transformation for moving forward, driven by the responsibility that cybersecurity carries with the legal infrastructure that it has around it. Thank you very much.